Welcome to Rapid Harmony. I'm Kyle Emanuel Brown. This is a space for high-achieving souls who want more than outcomes. You want resonance, you want truth, you want a life that moves with purpose instead of pressure. Here, we explore success with the soul and direction with depth. We slow things down just enough to hear your own wisdom again. We breathe, we question, we remember the part of you that never needed permission to leave. Every conversation is an invitation to trust yourself more than the noise around you, and live from that clarity that rises when you stop forcing and start listening. Take a breath, settle in, let's begin. So Steve, what if most high-performing men aren't actually choosing their lives, but they're running a nervous system program that they never consciously installed?
Well, I think that's a lot of us, right? Because we all had these programs installed when we were young, and we didn't really choose them. And the thing about them that I think is difficult, especially because they happen while your brain is developing. And so you don't realize that the program that is being installed as an adaptation is not actually you, right?
Right.
So you think, oh, I'm this, I'm that. I blow up when I get under stress. I do whatever. That's just me. And then over time, if you learn a little bit about the brain and how it's developing up through age 7, there's a stat that I think is amazing. There's 1 million neurons a second being generated from the time you're born until you're 7 years old in your brain. Dang. So it's developing that rapidly. And I think the purpose of life is to identify that program, which is uniquely ours. Typically, it troubles us in some way. And to have the courage and the fortitude to face it, to go inside instead of outside. Oftentimes entrepreneurs like you and I, we get a lot of external validation, right? Oh, you're making money, you're successful, you're this or that, and it kind of feeds you enough just to survive.
That's right.
But not enough to really thrive. So yeah, I believe that dealing with that program is our spiritual path. It's our path to being better fathers, better husbands, better entrepreneurs. And I think that's why we're on this podcast, to talk about it.
That's right. And so with that in mind, it seems like a lot of what we call, drive and ambition and hustle culture and masculinity, a lot of times it's just dressed up survival mode.
Yeah, for me, it was fear, and really fear of the present moment. So, because I had, an experience of significant childhood trauma, which I look at as my blessings now, but I was not comfortable being in the present moment. And the way my psyche oriented around was going into the future, planning, doing all these things. And so I was constantly looking. I constantly had a future that was going to be better than this present that I was desperately trying to avoid. And it would go in 2 different ways. It was mostly heavy action, and then it was collapse.
Oh, okay.
So I would say I was mostly like anxious. It would be the kind of psychological term, until I ran out of gas, and then I'd be depressed a little bit. But I was more of like, I think if you orient around the future, you're anxious. And if you orient around the past, you're depressed. If you have kind of, one of those diagnoses. So I was more future oriented.
Makes perfect sense. And, the depression only happens when you take a second to breathe and realize your current awareness approach, because we try to shut down that depression by just filling it with more stuff and more goals and more future, right?
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I'm sure you get this all the time. We both work with men, especially successful men who have it all. I have it all, yet I feel empty.
Right.
And I think we've been sort of tricked in this culture to think that we're empty and there's some amount of shit we can shovel into this void that will fill it up, whether it's accomplishments or sexual conquest or whatever it is. And my experience personally is that it's infinite, so you cannot fill it with those things. And really, I don't even believe that it's emptiness. I believe it's darkness. And
Right.
sort of what we talked about before is that path, that program, really, I would say, is our light being covered up as kids. Right.
That's
And
right.
so maybe it's with spray paint, with heavy trauma, it's all at once, or it's with little drips of disapprovals, comments, certain ways that we learned as kids that who we are is not right, is not good. And so if we start to uncover that, we no longer feel empty because it's no longer dark there.
Mm.
And we fear it less, I believe, because you realize that darkness, that space is where your light emanates from.
Right.
And if you trust yourself enough to feel that you're worthy, which took me many, many decades to feel that if I looked inside, there would be something worth finding there. But once you do that, then you can be more still. I know you have a big meditation practice, as I do. And it's really where all the goods are.
It's beautiful, and I'm excited to walk everybody through your journey today, so that it can, in turn, relate to where their journey is, where they're at, and they'll get some beautiful nuggets here. But for context, I want to give a little bit on your background. So Steve Sapourn is the host of the Neuro Journey podcast, where you interview scientists, clinicians, people working in the world of nervous system transformation. I had the honor of just recently being interviewed, and his work explores how brain function helps behavior and what becomes possible when a man's nervous system stops running on survival mode. Totally relevant for what we're talking about today. He's the author of the forthcoming book, The Lion and the Baboon, which argues that masculinity is not a performance to maintain, it's a nervous system state. His frameworks use 3 archetypes: the baboon, which represents fear, drive, and survival performance; the bear, which represents shutdown, numbness, and the crash that eventually catches up; and the lion, that represents stillness, presence, grounded power, and the man underneath the conditioning. So through his protocol, Steve pairs neurofeedback with identity to help successful men regulate their nervous system, restore brain function, and accept a deeper version of leadership, fatherhood, partner, and life. Background-wise, he also had a 30-year career in hedge funds, and he left that in early 2025 after his own nervous system transformation and brain function restoration. Lives in Boulder with his beautiful partner, Leah, and is a father of 2, Athena and Apollo. So you're not just sitting around meditating in a cave all day long, giving great insight and wisdom about other people's life. You're playing what I like to call the expert level, the video game of life, it sounds like.
Well, thank you. I'm trying. I think I've played a lot of the different games, and really, at some point, I decide to make that choice. And I use the animal analogies just because I like them, and they're kind of true to how those animals actually operate in the wild. And I was that baboon, and basically the baboons. When I traveled in Africa, I have experience with these animals. And the baboons are kind of gnarly animals to be around. They don't feel good when you're around it. It's a constant dominant hierarchy. They're constantly fighting. They're constantly stressing each other out. They've tested them. They have high cortisol levels. They are like finance guys in their late 40s who are going to die of a heart attack. That's like the baboon. And that's kind of what I went for. I needed external validation to feel good about what was happening, because if I thought inside there wasn't something good. And as I've shifted up my mentality, I decided to make the choice that what I was putting out into the world was not really helpful to me, my partner, my kids. And really what would be more helpful to them was to regulate my own shit in here and take responsibility for it, instead of say, well, that's the way I am. I do all these other things for you. I bring home the bacon. You've got these great lives. So you've got to deal with the fact that I'm an asshole sometimes. Nah, it's not really, I don't think that's the approach. I can deal with the fact that I was an asshole sometimes, right? And so it's not easy, but I also find the people that you care about, once you engage in that practice, they give you a lot of grace.
Yeah.
They don't expect perfection. They see that you're trying. An apology goes a long way. And then the more that you see them, at least for me, the way I'm oriented, I've gotten tons of personal benefits, but to see positive effects of my children and my partner, that's the most motivation and what really keeps me going.
So what was the catalyst that, brought you down this path? So you're in, hedge fund space up until 2025. And where would you say at that, like, what was the moment where you sat back and just said, something's got to shift, something's got to change. I'm not feeling really aligned with who I am at this moment.
It's been a long process. There was an actual moment where my behavior started to change and I had a realization about a lot of my life. And that was actually in the pit of a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert on psychedelics. And I had just a small amount, but I just really had a download of how I operated in life, which was, you perceive the world to be scary and out to get you. You're trying to control everything because you're not comfortable where you're at. You're squeezing the magic out of life. And the reason why I was scared is I had imprinted on me, I call them blessings, and I know that can be a triggering framing, but I think it's positive for me. In my childhood, I had 4 blessings, one of which was a very loving mother who kind of saved me. And the other 3 were pretty severe childhood traumas. Long-term sexual abuse. I witnessed a mass murder. I had a gun pointed in my face. I lived in a house with domestic violence. And so what I learned in those things was, inside your house, outside of your house, randomly, it's violent and men are perpetrating things. And I was scared. And so I operated from fear for a really long time. And the last thing I trusted was what was inside of me. And so at that Chili Peppers concert, I got the clear messaging, listen to the 2 kinds of voices that you have. You have the screaming, loud ones that are very scared. And listen to this one. I'm not really begging you to do anything. I'm laying out what's wise. It's up to you. And so I decided to start listening to that wise voice, which I think most people would call intuition. Right. And since that date, pretty radical changes have happened in my life. I haven't used alcohol, haven't used street drugs. I still use psychedelics for, 4 years. I've lost 50 pounds. I've changed careers. I've found the love of my life. Everything in my life has changed, from what it's like to be in a coffee shop to what it's like to be a father.
So it all started when the great Anthony Kiedis said, you got to give it away, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was hilarious too, because I'm there crying, and people are mosh pitting all over the place. It was a great show too. And it really was. I had the blessing of getting sick in it. And I didn't know anything about psychedelics and really how to use them wisely then. And a really important part of it is integration. And getting sick with COVID forced me to just marinate in it. And so I really wrote down, really reflected on the things and psychedelic experiences. They have a lot of fireworks and they seem like you could never forget them, but that's not really true. If you go right back to your life, I laid in bed for 10 days, basically, and journaled and thought about it. And more parts of that experience came on. And my behavior shifted radically, on a dime. I haven't had alcohol since then, and it's taken 0 willpower because it just doesn't appeal to me anymore. So it's there was shifts that happened that I just acknowledged in my identity. And I think psychedelics are great with helping you shift your identity, but you have to put that work in, especially in the time right after, which is the critical period.
And part of that work for you was the neurofeedback space, where you got to go sit there and really use some of this incredible modern technology to learn how does your brain work and function currently, and be able to benchmark that against these, norms, and also what is peak performance, and get to look, at the inside of your mind to get a sense of how do you, based on everything you went through in this incredible trauma in childhood, how do you respond to external threats as well as internally created threats. So tell me a little bit about that process of going through a little bit of that neurofeedback.
Yeah, for me, it was a transformational process. And I'm sort of an all of the above kind of person. I mean, ancient techniques and the most modern ones with neurofeedback specifically for somebody like me who had a lot of shame and felt that they were broken and damaged at their core. To go into a more doctor-like setting and have them scan my brainwave function and then look at it after and tell me a lot of behaviors without them knowing my background. You exhibit trauma, you're probably anxious, you probably have addictive behaviors, you probably, I mean, all these things that were me. It felt like, oh, this is an injury. I have an injury.
That's right.
And they said we can move your brain in the direction of health. And what's cool about the process is it's kind of like dog training for your brain. I was just watching surf videos essentially, and the computer was rewarding me by having a bigger picture and more sound when my brain was in a healthier functioning state.
Fascinating.
And then the screen would close and it would get smaller and there'd be less sound. And there was nothing for me to do. I couldn't like concentrate harder, but your brain figures it out. And then all of a sudden it gets bigger. And so what would happen is we'd do 10 sessions. And then after the 10th, I'd get another scan and you would see the changes. And it was very powerful because also good things were happening in my life. But, this isn't always linear. So it's not like everything's getting better. You fall back and all that. So for me, it was very powerful to be like, look, I'm perceiving that I'm doing better. And then it's 6 weeks later and I've done a new scan. He's like, well, yeah, you look where your brain has moved. So it ratified that. And then over a period of 40 sessions over 5 or 6 months with a good friend of both of ours, Tristan Miles at Neuro Grove.
Shout out to Neuro Grove.
Yeah, rooted entrepreneur and all that. My brain function went from one that was characterized by somebody who had a lot of trauma to one that looked normal. And during that time, my life also improved a lot. So I think it's really important. Like, I think everybody should have this test. My son, who's turning 18, just got his brain scanned. And it's because we're going to see what it's like. And if there's things that we can change about the function, what I noticed is once my brain was functioning better, then what I wanted to do happened easier. Whereas before, I felt like I was just at this glass ceiling of my nervous system or my brain function or whatever. I'm intending to do breath work every day or this or that. And I just couldn't get past a certain place. And then with all these things, brain function improved, nervous system improved. And then, you have a lot of practices, right? The practices became easier and the results of them became easier to see. And before, I think it was just more difficult for me to see and stick with the practices over the longer term.
So 2 interesting things here that I thought was fascinating and relevant that you brought up. One is that, if you look at Hermeticism, the idea of the universe being mental, it shows you how much of all of this starts with your mind. And what is so cool is that you can actually look at the brain and its relationship to the mind and the way it's functioning and work and fix and address that. And it then drips down into every facet of your 3D reality. And the second is when you talked about this as an injury, when you're looking at what's going on with your brain based on the trauma and you approach it as an injury, now it's not victim versus hero, right? When you're like, well, I can't really be the hero right now. It's athlete, which is fantastic. If you can take that frame of I am an athlete in this game of life, what you said lines up perfectly, which is some days are incredible. Some days the rehab hits you a little bit harder from the injury and you need to persevere a little bit more, use that willpower, if you will, as the engine. But most of the time there's that enthusiasm to be that best version of your athletic self. And then it's like, hey, my brain was injured from this trauma. Now there's hope and there's a pathway to heal that injury like any other injury.
And it's interesting too, because of the stigma with mental health. So if you are an athlete and you tear your knee up, nobody looks bad, and you certainly don't feel bad for going to a doctor about it. And you don't feel bad for limping around for a while if you have a torn ACL.
Right.
You just, okay, I'm going to see a doctor. I'm going to get some treatment. I'm going to rehab it. This is a natural thing. I'm not embarrassed. You walked in here with a cast on, right?
That's
You're
right.
not embarrassed about that cast, right?
Right.
The way some people are embarrassed about things that are mental illness. And so seeing it as an injury, to me, just made it easier to deal with on my own psyche and shame levels and all that. And it made it, because I'm kind of a go-getter, it made it like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Right.
When it's sort of like, there's something wrong with me. And well, I don't know if I can fix that, but I know if you tell me to do this I'll do this and I will get from point A to point B. So it really shifted it a lot. And what's cool about it is that thing also brought out an ability to have more spirituality.
Right.
And so I think that even though, that's sort of more of a type A approach to kind of healing, by that healing, I'm much more able to have a spiritual practice, and I'm much more desirous of looking inward, because it doesn't feel like this like shaking, buzzing nervous system that I lived with for 50 years.
Right. I think spiritual practice isn't very evident when you're being chased by a lion.
Exactly.
Right? You may be like, God help me,
right?
But now you've passed all autonomy away from yourself in that moment. So there's the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. But so much of it is just like any type of injury, is that once these high achievers that both of us were slow down, that's when you create that space and that opening for the spiritual practice to become part of your daily embodiment. So when did spirituality come in this process for you personally?
So it's interesting. I feel like I always wanted it to come in, and I had done in my 30s, a significant amount of meditating, 10 silent retreats, 10 days long over a period of years. And it still couldn't really break through into my daily life. And honestly, I would say really in the past, more recently, just in the present moment, in the past month or so, since an ayahuasca journey, where I had a realization that, and I think with psychedelics, for me, a lot of people give the medicine too much credit. The medicine told me this, the medicine told me that. I frame it more like, I have inner wisdom. The medicine surfaces it, and it puts a little fireworks display around it and make it look really cool. But what my inner wisdom told me was, this is the time for you to engage more deeply with your spiritual practice. My son is just graduating high school. My daughter's in college. I started up with a coach it's a spirituality coach. So I'm meditating twice a day for 45 minutes a pop, plus doing all kinds of other practices. And it's just really feeling like where my life is going. And so I have a lot of experience getting out of that fight or flight stage. And that's sort of what my book is about. The book is about really who I was 5 years ago and how I got from here to there. I'm just beginning a deep spiritual path. I don't think I have a lot to say about that because I haven't lived it. But I will say that it is happening. It feels just like after the chili peppers, and I also got sick after it, but it feels like that, where my behavior just changed. It was so odd. I just started going to yoga. I started doing things that were more so, they were just happening, and it just felt like me, and it didn't take any willpower. And since ayahuasca, I have just been oriented around my spiritual path in a way that is just different. And compared to most, I had a pretty deep meditation. I was probably meditating 4 days a week for 20 minutes, which is way more than most people. But it was always, well, I have to meet Kyle. I slept late. I didn't do it. Now it's just I'm orienting my life and I'm getting it done no matter what. And just because I want to.
So when you were Steve, the hedge fund manager, the external two-dimensional paper version of success? Were you getting more eyeballs looking at you then saying, wow, this is Steve, the hedge fund guy, and there's this pedestal you're being put on, versus now when you're playing the game of total authenticity, how has that shifted perception from the old people versus the new people that are coming into your life?
Well, I think the difference was, so because I had a very challenging youth and I was kicked out of school. I mean, I wasn't like predicted to be the guy very successful in business early. So I did get a fair amount of people in my community. I grew up with ethnic Greeks. They value business and all this kind of thing. So I got some of that good feeling. What was also happening inside is I was feeling horrible and I was a crack addict, behind the scenes. So a lot of the people that I were bringing into me were radiating that kind of energy, right? They weren't really. And so now what is different is I get a different kinds of people show up, people that I want to interact with, that want to be helpful to what I'm doing. So yeah, I have deeper relationships. The other thing, we talked about it, we don't know each other that much, but because we're relating on a deeper level in maybe 3 hours that we've actually sat with each other, kind of feel like we're pretty close.
There's an instant resonance.
Because we've told each other about our lives and we're authentic. Whereas I could have spent 30 hours partying with you in my 20s and I wouldn't have known anything about you, except it was fun to hang out and get girls together.
Yeah. So well said.
So it's just everything's deeper. It happens more quickly, which is convenient because at 57, it's harder to pull time to like spend a ton of time with a new friend, right?
And when you do, you want to drop in really deep because you're valuing your time at a whole nother level. And I'm curious from your experience with this, because like I'll look back and I've got friends who I've known in all different levels, and I've got, ones that I can drop in really deep with. And I also have friends I've known for a long time, and we have the longevity factor. But again, we've never really gone below sports or girls or things like that. So the conversations still haven't gotten below the surface of the water, let alone down to the basement of the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed also. I have friends from, 40-year friends that I'm still close with. And a number of them have also gone through these processes. And there is something about the people who know you and how you were. I have a thing that was really beautiful that happened. A friend of mine who's been doing this work also, who's known me since I was 15, just called me up one day and he's like, I'm just so proud of you. Like, I know how you grew up and what was going on for you, and you've really like healed your lineage. And so he can say that in a way to me that you could say the same thing because you heard the story, but he knew my life. I mean, he was in my house. So to have that reflection over all these years. And so I value and love them all. Would I spend enough time to get to know me as a 25-year-old? No, I probably wouldn't. I would like me because I was funny and charismatic, but I would have moved away because that's not where I'm at. But I value all the friends and all the things, and I just create connection. I don't need a lot of substances to create connection, which is how I did for most of my life.
So from that experience, why do you think that so many of these successful men who look so impressive on the outside feel off underneath?
Well, I think it's the fundamental desire to seek outside what is inside to find. And it's valued by our culture, right? So you can be addicted to a number of things. You could be addicted to heroin, not really valued by our culture. You could be addicted to workaholism, and people think that's great. They might even tell stories about how you work a 100-hour week and all that kind of stuff. That's still an addiction. It's still avoiding something. So I think that we have a very consumer-oriented culture. So that and value and entrepreneurial success are valued. So when you feel less than in yourself, you get people telling you, and you get money and possessions and things, it feels good. And it's like, they have these golden handcuffs to keep you in a business. You're making just enough money to not leave something that you really want to leave. I think that's just the same in that zone of life, right? You're getting enough gratification outside possessions and things that you're not falling apart, but you also know that it's not really where you want to be.
So you talk about masculinity as a nervous system state, not a performance to maintain. What do you really mean by that?
Well, sort of what we were talking about. At this point, like, I want you to feel me.
Right.
So, like, if you're around me and you feel a certain way, that I might not have to demonstrate things to you. Of course, we're talking and I'm bullshitting about myself here. But in general, what I'm trying to cultivate is when you're around me, you feel good. And because I think there's an energetic exchange, and I'm trying to cultivate love for all people. And if I don't have to tell you that, but I can be it and you feel better around me, that is much different than, kind of posing as to what I am. I was in a men's group. I'm still in a men's group for 10 years. And they told me I was sad for years and years and years. And I used to laugh at them and say, like, I don't think you're very good at this, and, and all this stuff. But it was really like, I wasn't acknowledging to my own self that I was actually sad. And so they were seeing it and they cared about me enough to actually say it. But what I would be doing out in the real world is you might, pick up that there's something a little sad about me, but I'm joking and fucked up with you and all these kinds of things.
That's right.
And so that's what I led with.
I love that. So much of that is the layers underneath and the intent. So if we sit back and think about what is our intention for most people when they're in an environment, everyone's thinking typically the same things, which is they're judging me for this. And what if my hair doesn't look brushed? I didn't put my gel in today. And what about the outfit or this or this? Or what if they don't think I'm smart enough or this? Or I need to show myself to be better than them so they'll accept me and I can then get what I want from them or this business. It's extremely performative. Versus what you're saying is the opposite, which is exactly what I say is the greatest way to get out of depression and sadness, is stop making it about you. If you're sitting in an environment and it's just like, my intention is to now make this person feel better being in my space. And how do I do that? And it's getting out of your head and into your heart. And when you're in that heart, now you're resonating. Now you're making that other person feel better just by simply being in your presence. And I think so many people need to remember that getting other people to feel better, it's not about doing work. It's much more about giving it away, right? Letting go and just getting yourself into that state where you're just feeling really good. And I always say that smiling is one of the greatest, easiest ways to tell state. And it's not the performative smile. It's like when we raise our consciousness up closer towards bliss, which eventually could reach enlightenment, it just naturally just wells out of you, this childlike laughter and play and joy. And I'm curious from your experience, because you have been always a very charismatic guy, but people could see through it who really cared, who were in your men's group. And they're like, actually, you're just sad and you're covering it up with that. How would you describe with you right now the difference between the performative, entertainment, charismatic, laughing, smiling versus this calm, centered, smiling, laughing, much more joyous person?
Well, I think that I'm also much more willing to just say what's happening when I'm scared or when I don't. I mean, it's not like this is like I live in some cultivated world of joy and bliss. That's not what happens. It's just I'm trying not to reject the moments that I feel fear. And so, I'm embarking on a new career and a new path, and I get fearful about it, and I have my old patterns of seeking outside ratification, and I want more of it, and all those things. And so what happens now is my people around me, my son, my partner, like here, like, man, I was just scared today. Like, and this is what happened. I was starting to feel this and I was feeling less than, and they just start to see me. And then actually, once I say that, it's really naming it. Like, I think if I name what's happening to me, it very quickly disappears.
I love that. So based on your experience, the stuff you studied, a lot of things I'm really into, for the listeners at home, it's an awareness that vulnerability, when done with the intention of authenticity, not just trying to get people to say, oh, it feels so bad for you, but like done with an authenticity, it is a superpower, and it gives everyone else around you the permission to be themselves, right?
Yeah, and that's what you want to see. I mean, don't you want to see just the real? I mean, the real people are interesting enough. And honestly, the stories, I mean, one thing that we get to do is learn about people and hear their stories. And the blessing of my past is I really believe that everybody I meet, I know that they've been through something. Right. I know that they've carried something. I know that there's some deep things that they've overcome, and that's a lot more interesting than the thing that they think I want to see, which is some boilerplate canned like image.
I love that.
And it just becomes easier too. You don't wallow in it. Like the part of naming it, like even just saying that. So, I know I've been very vulnerable about my sexual abuse, which has been it was a very powerful thing for me. And it's kind of like the root of all my fears. So it's not like you just say it one time and name it and it's through it. But by talking about it, it helps me for sure. And I have noticed that it's helpful to other people. And I have had multiple 3 or 4 men tell me I'm the only person that they've told about their sexual. I mean, my wife and my therapist and you, and people that I literally met at like lunch, and so, and they've just said like to hear you talk about it is just helpful. So that also, it's one of those things I'm not looking for, I don't want people feeling sorry for me, because honestly, what I feel about that, if I come down to it and why I call them my blessings, the thing that I think most about myself is how I've dealt with my sexual abuse. I mean, that, I know it's difficult. I know how hard it was on me. I know I had a lot of other things that were hard, but this was the core. It's what I respect about myself. So I don't need anybody's sympathy on it, because actually it was an opportunity for me to exhibit courage and resilience and action. Like, I know you're big on doing shit. You have to do things.
Right.
But I know that I did those things. And so I feel like that was a blessing. I really I'm blessed that happened. Now, if I knew it was I would stop it from happening to someone else. But it already happened. It's the past. It couldn't have happened any other way. It's like how I deal with it now. And so that's what I want. I just think there's this dynamic of that we feel like, especially in that circumstance, somebody is a predator on us. Somehow we turn ourselves bad and we shit on ourselves our entire life for somebody else's bad behavior. And really, it's an opportunity to learn the most about yourself and to know the resilience. And I know, whatever happens in the future, my best friends I'm going to die. Everyone, all those things are going to happen. I know I have resilience.
Yeah.
I know. And I know my goal isn't to be happy in every moment. That's a ridiculous goal. Our loved ones are going to die. You're not happy then. What you want to be is peaceful. Right?
That's right.
I can understand that this is a part of life and I'm going to feel it, but I'm not going to spin out and turn my life terrible because something happened. So really what I've been going towards is peace and working, and I think working through the nervous system stuff that we've talked a lot about with. And I feel at this point, I have a regulated nervous system that operates the way a nervous system is supposed to. I freak out when it's time to freak out, but it comes back down. And so now then I get to operate in other realms, which I'm really just starting to learn about. And they're really exciting to me. And it feels like, man, I'm 57 and the most interesting part of my life is just starting.
I love that. And I applaud the awareness of being a lifelong student, and 57 doesn't mean, hey, I'm set in my ways. Like so many people have put themselves in a box at 57 and you're looking at it and saying, wow, I have so much life left to live and this is going to be amazing. And that to me is one of the big keys to longevity, is that curiosity and excitement, enthusiasm, and not letting themselves etch themselves into their own box. So I want to go a little bit deeper, if you're open to it, to really help empower and inspire anybody listening who, you know, is looking at you just going, wow, you know, I've gone through some form of sexual abuse, male or female, but especially in this case, the men. And I want to get to that point of being open with it. What happened in your journey that got you to the point where you said, hey, I'm going to take this from something that lives here or really deep in the basement of my mind to something I can now say on a podcast?
Well, we talked about the men's group. And so I was working in the men's group. I discovered my sexual abuse under hypnosis. So I had years of working with my men's group before it, you know, my psyche was willing to surface it for me,
right.
You know, that I could handle it. And I learned over time by starting to be vulnerable and starting to get the different reflections. So, you know, oftentimes the way our group would operate would be, you know, I would say something would happen. The leader, Ravain Bacall, would say, well, we'll give Steve reflections. And they would say, well, you know, I was feeling this, I'm feeling that. And what I started to notice as I got a little more vulnerable and there were some kind of dramatic moments where I was out of control. I couldn't stop crying or whatever. The guys gave me better reflection. So I instantly, from a group of people that I trusted who had the wherewithal to handle something like this. I mean, don't go and tell somebody about your sexual abuse that can't handle it.
Right.
I mean, you know, there was a licensed therapist there. There were 10 men that I'd worked with for a while. You know, I didn't just start vomiting this out.
It was an
to
unfolding.
People. But as I started to do it, I started to get better with it. And I got that I learned it. It was a superpower, and it's actually something that I'm good at. And then the second thing was psychedelic assisted therapy and MD. You know, there's the psychedelics have different things that they're good at. MDMA is very good for this kind of thing, right? Because you're flooding yourself with the love chemicals. You can get into fearful experiences. And so I had a very powerful experience with somebody who's done this for a long time, an expert in sexual abuse who's worked with psychedelics for decades. You know, don't just find somebody in the back of Rolling Stone who got their thing yesterday and deal with the most difficult things. But in that environment, what I loved about it is what she called herself was not a guide, but a witness. And so mostly what I was getting was ratifications on what I wanted to do. So I would say, you know, man, I really want to kind of forgive him. And she was like, I think that would be a good thing. You know, go and do it. Or just ask a particular question. It wasn't like leading the witness. It was sort of bringing up topics for me to like learn. And so because of that, I didn't get this guruized feeling of her. What I felt was I had somebody who was very loving there, who was very wise, who was prompting me to learn. And so the psychedelics really helped me to just take the edge off of it, because it came back in a flood, and my experience wasn't one time. It was over a significant amount of time. And under hypnosis, I mean, my body was flopping around. I was sweating. I mean, all these memories are coming back, and it's a very intense thing to sit with. And I remember the first night afterwards, I mean, I was really unable to deal with it. And I was like a 6-year-old kid. I mean, I was 50 some years old, maybe 5 years ago, 52 years old. I'm in my house alone, and I'm checking the lock of my bedroom door like 20 or 30 times in the night, and just feeling like a little kid. And so like all this was coming out, and then very shortly thereafter, I had my psychedelic experience. And then I worked on it in hypnosis for a long time, and I continue to orient around it. I don't feel like it has It doesn't have a day-to-day pull on me.
Good.
But there are those things where, I still continue to realize how deeply oriented my childhood was around fear. And so, like, how do I now start to exhibit courage to teach myself that I can get through fear?
Mm.
And I try to do that as often as possible.
Whew. I can only imagine where you were versus where you are right now in the ability to speak, again, not from the head, but from the heart, where it doesn't need to be a scripted plan, where you can just pour out this emotion, experience, vulnerability, awareness, and how that then creates an incredibly safe space for those who are going through the same type of stuff. And when you do that, you are giving them that permission slip to explore within their own situations. And a lot of times, a lot of people who had been victimized in any capacity or experienced any type of trauma, like watching multiple murders, things along those lines, they suppress it to the level like it's never existed and go on with their day, but they're going on with their day operating through that lens of life without even knowing it. And so for you, it came out in a hypnosis session. What was your experience with hypnosis the first time you went through hypnosis? Was this something you're more deep into hypnosis, or what made you open to the idea of hypnosis? For me, I started studying hypnosis at its highest levels, and I found it really interesting. All of the different types, from the types that can get somebody to become a stage performer without even being aware of it. That's a completely different type of hypnosis. And I find those tend to be the people who are the same guys that when they put themselves under hypnosis, AKA they get wasted, that version of them shows out on stage and they're the performer, entertainer, versus hypnosis that's designed for the deep inner awareness of things that they have suppressed. So what made you, have you always been open and curious to these types of things, of healing modalities? You said you did 10 meditation retreats in the past, but would you think there was always this underlining, like, something's a little off, I want to fix it? Or was it more just from the awareness that was kickstarted from the psychedelics?
A little bit of both. I mean, I've always been the kind of person that thought that there could be a better day in front of me.
Right.
And so I tried things, and I, before it was really effective, I did a lot of things. For this particular, it really relates to that psychedelic experience, because what I started doing is, just if I got any inclination towards something helpful, I would do it. And I think for me particularly, and I think a lot of men who are numb, I didn't have a good facility for my own feelings. Right. So I didn't have nuance between all these things. So basically what I decided was, if I think about something and I think it will be helpful, I'm going to do it without a lot of research and spoiling it with the thing. So literally I saw something of one of those Vegas hypnotherapists, and just into my mind, I was like, man, I wonder if that would be helpful with my trauma stuff. Oh. And I literally that was 11:30 at night, and I got on, it's Boulder. I found a really experienced person who works with hypnosis and trauma, and I booked an appointment with her that night. And so I had a really good experience where she went through my history, and we created sort of a structure for me to interact with the traumatic experiences that I knew about. And what happened is where this came from. So the basic structure was, tell me all of your things. I put these little sticks up, like, this was really bad when my dad beat my mom. This was bad. This was not so bad. And she developed a house, and it had a long hallway and all these doors. And behind all the doors were these traumatic experiences. And there was also a place for little Steve to have his safe room and all of his toys and that. So the theory is, Big Steve can walk in, he can interact with these particular scenes or witness them or change them. And one day when I was going to actually sort of deal with something that I had seen, I just instantly went into another place. And I was like, I'm scared. And I remember it really vividly because my voice like really sounded like a kid. I mean, I have a fairly deep voice and all that. It got high and I started saying, I'm scared. You know, what are you scared of? The bad man. What's the bad man doing? He's hurting me. How's he hurting you? He's touching me. And, you know, and then it just started to flood.
Right.
And so I had really good experience with hypnosis in a lot of ways, in dealing with some traumatic things, in just boilerplate, like day-to-day things that I wanted to stop. You know, it was very helpful for that. It played a role in my sexual abuse. I mean, it was essentially hypnosis helped me uncover it. MDMA therapy helped me get like kind of love around it and like release a lot of the anger specifically towards it. But I still had many more remnants of it, right? And so then hypnosis, the second part of it was sort of like expelling that fucker from my psyche. And that wasn't so pleasant and loving.
No.
Like there were times when we were envisioning me killing him and, you know, and those kinds of things. So it was a process. So I find hypnosis to be extremely valuable. You don't want to do it with somebody who hypnotizes one person a week. I mean, you want it somebody that is their job and they work with it a lot. What I really liked about it is she's a licensed therapist named Tammy Satterfield. I highly recommend her. But you do kind of a therapy session first and you say, what's this and that? And she's like, you want to work on it. And then either you're going back in the past about your thing, or it's like, Kyle really pissed me off and I felt like this and like that. And then you actually go in and do hypnosis on that thing. And what I felt like, whether it was like serious, major historical things that were affecting my life all the time, or just something I needed to move through, I got to talk about it and then get into like changing my behavior. And when you're getting in the subconscious, that's where most of your behavior comes from. So she helped me to just move things along, I think, at a much more rapid pace than I would have been able to with, I don't even think I could have gotten to the places in regular talk therapy. I mean, she's a very skilled talk therapist,
right?
And I would have gotten benefit out of it, but I don't think I would be talking about her on my podcast if she didn't also hypnotize me.
Right. And I think two parts of that are really important to take away is one, you know, a lot of people are afraid of hypnosis because they're afraid of, hey, is somebody going to be able to manipulate me? And within all of that, all hypnosis is actually self-hypnosis, which means you are in the driver's seat. So even though these things are coming out of you, they're not coming out of you against your will.
Yeah, I never felt anything like that. The way that I would describe it to people is that feeling of just before you're about to go to bed, right? You're kind of there, but you're also not there. You're in the much lower theta waves or whatever.
Right.
And if your wife asks you a question, you can answer it, but you could also fall asleep. Right.
That's right.
You know, and
that's
so
right.
Like that's the zone where you've very much calmed down. It's not a lot of active thought. And it was just allowing me to kind of get in there a little bit and work with it, where not so much of the day-to-day things were also going on.
And you're letting your guard down in a safe space, where it's safe space, meaning one, none of the information there will be used against you. And two, safe enough that I can let this out and this person can hold the container for this because their intention is to serve you.
And it's nothing like the Vegas hypnosis. I mean,
right.
I mean, you don't meet somebody and then they hypnotize you. You talk about your sexual abuse in like 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, like this was months and months into my sessions with her.
Yes.
And I don't even think we hypnotized for a while. We talked and she explained the process and all those sort of things. So yeah, there's a lot of trust building.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't let someone I didn't trust hypnotize me.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
But yeah, I don't think there's any way that someone's going to turn you into something you're not.
Right. And the mastery in all of these tools and techniques, there is no quick fix. This is a process. It's very similar to the idea of what happens in the awareness when you realize you don't die. Like when you're like, wait, I don't die, I maybe lose this meat suit, but my consciousness is going on into another new experience. And you get to this point, for me after a near-death experience where I'm like, okay, well, I'm stuck with Kyle forever. So what does that mean? Maybe I won't be the avatar of Kyle Emanuel Brown here on planet Earth having this experience, but I'm stuck with me forever. So when you look at it that way, besides just the, hey, I've got X number of years alive on this planet and I want to squeeze everything out of it, you have a little bit more patience then to do the work while you're here, and remembering why you're here is to take all of this crud off you and remember who and what you are. I want to hit you with some rapid fire.
All right.
And just let them pour out of you whatever comes to you first. There's no wrong answers. The only wrong answers are the ones that will turn into really funny clips afterwards.
All right, cool. Perfect.
I'm just kidding. All right, here we go. What's one sign a man is in survival mode, but he doesn't know it?
I think quick to anger.
Well said. What's one behavior most men call discipline that may actually be fear?
Workaholism.
Check, been there. What's one thing that a regulated man does differently in conflict?
Pauses.
Beautiful. Breath is so great for that. What's one thing men misunderstand about stillness?
That it's a waste of time.
Amen. What's one nervous system practice you think every man should learn?
I think breath work first, because it's easiest to attach to.
What's one question every successful man should ask himself this week?
Why am I here?
What's one thing your kids have taught you about presence?
They have taught me that if I exhibit it, then I get so much more from them.
Beautiful. What's one thing hedge funds taught you about human nervous systems?
Well, they taught me. So what I did in hedge funds was construct a whole methodology to not let my emotions run my decision making. So now it wasn't the way that I would do it now. It was a set of rules, but essentially what I learned was reaction emotions are not helpful. Responses are helpful. And so I constructed a way of trading that forced me to have responses rather than reactions. And so I couldn't do that in my personal life then, but now I try to do it in my personal life.
Love that. And what's one sentence you wish more men could hear and believe?
That the reason you're here is within, and external achievements and all are valuable and great, but they're not ever going to get you to where you really are comfortable with yourself.
I love that. I love that. And that comfort comes from what?
I think that comfort comes from the confidence in knowing that you have actually faced the specific things that are for you. Like, we all have the things that are scary and difficult for us, and no one else really knows them but us. And when you endeavor to figure that out, then you have the confidence that you said, like, I've overcome the scariest things to me. That may be very different than what are scary to you. But oftentimes you and I just went out to entrepreneurism or success or whatever, because that's what the culture told us we should be doing to soothe our soul. And then I think a lot of us, we see it over and over, right? People feel empty after all the success. I hear it every day.
So I want to flip the table for a minute and let you ask me one question of anything based on the work I do with Total Self-Trust, Rapid Harmony, taking people from force into alignment. What's one question that you want to ask me, now that we've had all of this time of now getting to know each other over the last couple of meetups?
Yeah, I think I would like you to explain the benefit and your morning routine around cacao.
Love it. Love it. And I have some beautiful cacao here for you.
Oh,
today,
sweet. You
too.
remembered. Awesome.
I didn't forget the cacao. It's in the backpack.
All right, cool.
And my ADHD brain would have forgotten it if you hadn't asked the question right now, and it would still be sitting in that bag.
Yeah, it's kind of like a drug deal where you're going to give off a kilo of cacao.
That's right. We're not messing around. We're dropping around some kilos. Yeah. Speaking of which, you should have seen TSA as I walked through. With this bricks of cacao on my way back from Costa Rica. Costa Rican government stops me like, "Hey, what is this that's showing up in our X-ray machine?"
Yeah, right.
I'm like, "Chocolate, enjoy." Cacao has been a really interesting thing for me. It's something that one of my heroes, Mahatma Gandhi, sat with every morning. He gave up coffee and tea for cacao. I'm slowly in the process, like sloth face in the process of making that transition to full elimination, but I have had cacao almost every day since 2020. And cacao to me is the anti-venom for hustle culture. It is what I call, the term that came to me is I call it a heartadelic, because it really, it's not psychedelic. You're not tripping out on it, although it works really well with certain psychedelics, but it really helps get you out of the head into the heart and to slow down. And I know for me, as that hustle guy, not only did I pride myself and I work 80 to 110 hours a week every week for 20 years on my sleeve. It was a tattoo that nobody cared about. Cacao is a process, and it takes time to get the cacao ready, prep it, bless it, slow down. It's really hot, so hot that it could burn your tongue in the beginning, that you have to blow on it, and you're starting the whole breathwork process, and you're taking yourself from future thinking, like most entrepreneurs are, and past thinking, and it helps you be here now. And it's a presence mechanism. So the cacao I serve is from the Bribri tribe of Costa Rica, and their whole religion is around it. And they talk about the idea that you don't have this separate time in the middle of your chaotic day where you go and you pray, but that every action you are taking is a prayer and a blessing. And so with cacao, the cacao is the reminder to help you remember who and what you are. And so for me with cacao, when I'm drinking it in the morning, I'm slowing down, I'm centering, I'm feeling good. And from a biological standpoint, having a clinical nutrition background, outside of oxygen, it is the most nutrient dense, healthiest thing you can put in your body. It is nature's ultimate multivitamin. And the theobromine in there is actually literally increasing the size of your heart. It's this ultimate vasodilator. So you want to be more heart-centered, hey, it's going to literally increase the size of it. It's a pretty amazing nutrient-dense superfood.
Wow, I love that too, because, as the antidote to the hustle culture, because I think that's a thing that a lot of us, before you get into this, you think you might lose your edge, right? If I calm down, I'm not going to have my edge. And actually, it's a very stimulating beverage, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not, even though it's the antidote to the hustle culture, it still is very uplifting. Right. And it gets you going. So it's not like, and I think it's true with all of this work, you're not losing your edge. You're just making it more sustainable, so that it's not having these peaks and valleys, right? Like, because you can have the cacao and then you can just operate.
Right. Well, if you look at the edge of this table, if I run full force into this, I'm going to cut myself.
Right.
And I'm going to need stitches. I think what it's doing is it's buffering those edges. So you aren't on edge all the time. And when people run into you full force right now, they can just give you a big old hug. And you become this being who's magnetic, right? If we look at business from a two-dimensional standpoint, it's hunting, it's fishing, it's kill or be killed, right? Maybe you're hunting like I'm going to go attract this, or you're fishing like I'm putting the lure on to try to manipulate people to take this where I can then bring them home and I fillet them, versus magnetizing. And cacao helps you become higher vibrational and more magnetic, which to me is what your objective is, what my objective is. And it's a way easier way to actually fall asleep at night, knowing that you're here to leave this world a better place, and you're magnetizing the right people, opportunities, experiences to yourself.
And it's chocolate.
And it's chocolate. So it's used to have chocolate every morning.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, thank the universe that it's chocolate that has these incredible benefits versus like snorting wasabi every morning. Right? Well, it's what we got to do because it's the right thing to do and has all these benefits, and then like, and everything's on fire. Like, don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I want to round off today with one question, which is, what does harmony mean to you?
Harmony means to me, it's really a realizing that I have a place within this world and universe. And I think that so much of what we talked about is avoiding looking within. And I think that is because I didn't feel like that I was really part of it and that I was good. And I think that harmony is realizing that I come from this. I'm part of this whole fabric of the universe. And not only am I part of it, but I am participating in it. And I can, the things that I do to better myself and are not only just for me, but are for all the people. That's a big part of the spiritual practice, right? You're blessing it. Like, may the merits of my spiritual practice impact all beings. So that feels really good. And that means I have harmony because I'm part of something. And I think that a lot of times we feel like we're alone and we're not part of something. And then how could you be at harmony with something if you're not part of it, if you're isolated?
Beautiful. I love that. Totally resonate. I just want to thank you for being here today. It's been an absolute joy. I'm hoping everybody who listens to this gets a couple of opportunities to embody some of these tools, tips, practices, and ways of looking at the world. And we're going to keep all of everything in the show notes, as well as over on sites where we'll link to your stuff. But what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I have a website called theneurosjourney.com, and it's got links to newsletters and podcasts and coaching and whatnot. And then the podcast is the way to hear things. I mean, you were on my podcast. Yeah. We did something similar, but different. But it's these kinds of conversations at all the places. The Neuro's Journey, like the hero's journey into your own mind.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. And an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to many years to come.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, my friend, if this episode sparked something in you, don't just wander off into the abyss of the internet. Hit subscribe so you can actually get the good stuff when it drops. And if you're feeling generous or mildly enlightened, leave some love in a review. It takes just 30 seconds, and somehow it feeds the algorithm gods so they notice and more people who really need it. Now, if you want to step deeper into my world, rapidharmony.com is where the real magic lives. Coaching, community, rituals, and a few surprises that are way better than just scrolling around another motivational reel and not doing anything about it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being you. And remember, your inner harmony isn't hiding. It's just waiting for you to pay attention. I'll see you on the next episode. Now go subscribe before you forget.